Flip that page. Here we go. So then we're talking about compound event. A compound event consists of two or more simple events. We've been doing compound events. We just haven't necessarily labeled it yet. So here we've got number 3, and now I can't read it. There you go. It says, suppose you toss a quarter, a dime, and a nickel. Find the sample space. What's the probability of getting three tails? Well, I mean, we can think about this right now and say, hey, I know that. It's going to be only one possibility of getting 3 tails. But the amount of possibilities, that sample space, is the part I don't know off the top of my head, which is why it's important that we decide, am I going to use an organized list to figure this out? Am I going to use a table or a tree diagram? I will tell you I made a tree diagram because I find that one to be the easiest to do. So my step 1 for this is find my sample space. I need to figure out what are all the possible outcomes. So in order to figure out all the possible outcomes, I need to figure out my sample space. So then I think, okay, I have a quarter, I have a dime, and I have a nickel. So that means my 3 rows of my tree diagram is going to be a quarter for the dime and for the nickel. And you can see it, quarter, I can either get a heads or a tails. So then I go ahead and I make my arrows, make them a little bit wider because I know that there's this third flip there. But if I get a heads, I know my dime can either be a heads or a tails. And then I also know that no matter which way I go here, I can still get a heads or a tails with my nickel. So therefore I've created my sample space. Now I'll go ahead and say, I know I'm going to get a lot of questions. Hey, Mrs. Schultz, can I write HHH or HHT for heads, heads, tails, or HTH? Yes, obviously a lot of these times you can go ahead and you can abbreviate. You probably abbreviate even over here to make your work a little bit shorter and probably a little bit more organized. And that is 100% okay as long as it's easy for someone to understand what you're talking about. So again, I'm looking at this sample space. How many possible outcomes are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 possible outcomes. So great, we've got our sample space. Step 2, count how many possibilities have 3 tails and write that probability. Well, which one has tails, tails, tails? Well, that's this last one. So, great. So 1 out of 8 have tails, tails, tails. So as you can assume, my probability is going to be 1 out of 8. And I just simply wrote here P of 3 tails because the probability of 3 tails is 1 out of 8. And we've just figured out that probability. Okay. When you're doing this, if you ask a different type of question, you just have to go back to your sample space and look at how many possibilities are there of whatever they're asking. And obviously for this particular one, it's always going to be out of 8 because there are 8 sample spaces. Sometimes there's going to be more, sometimes there's going to be less. But figuring out that sample space is going to be your first go-to. And today is all about coming up with that organized list of your entire sample space. All right. Number 4. Last one. Oh, I went too far. Sorry, guys. To win a carnival prize, you need to choose one of 3 doors labeled 1 through 3. Then you need to choose a red, yellow, or blue box behind each door. What is the probability that the prize is in the blue or yellow box behind door 2? Remember that or, it will become very important later on. So let's go ahead. We're noticing there is doors labeled 1 through 3. And there are 3 different colors to choose from after that. So we've got red, yellow, blue after that. So my first step, like all of them, create my sample space. I did a table for this one just because I'm trying to give you all the different views. If you choose a different route and you want to do a tree diagram, that's fine. If you want to do an organized list, that's fine, but you do need to make sure it's organized. Otherwise, you will forget one. It just always happens. But I went ahead, I've got a table here. And I've got door 1, red, door 1, blue, or yellow, blue, door 2, red, yellow, and blue, door 3, red, yellow, and blue. So there's my sample space. Now again, my next step, like always, is going to be count, it's not letting it come up. There it is. Count how many door 2s with blue or yellow. Notice that I'm making sure that you see the or. And that's because you need to make sure we're not just looking for door 2 blue or just door 2 yellow. I'm looking for both. So I'm going to go to which ones are door 2, which are these. And then I'm going to look which ones have blue or yellow, and I'm going to include them both. And I did circle them, but it looks like it's not coming up. But if I look here, these two, oh, it's not going to let me do it. Maybe I can. Let's see. If I look here, I've got door 2, yellow or blue. So that makes 2, oh, look at that. That makes 2 possible outcomes out of all of them. So I'm going to have to remember that, and so there are how many outcomes there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So again, 2 out of the 9 makes my probability 2 9s. And that's it for today, guys. Again, the main part of today is making up that sample space. So just a quick thought for you. When you're doing the sample space, remember, keep your list organized. It is super duper important. For instance, think about it. If I asked you how many different ways can you roll 2 dice? Okay. What are all the possible outcomes? What is your sample space? If you just start listing off different ones, like, oh, well, I could get a 1 and a 3, and then maybe I could get a 2 and a 5, and oh yeah, I can get a 5 and a 5, and maybe a 4 and a 3, and a 6 and a 2, and a 1 and a 1. By just listing them randomly, I'm going to forget some. But if I went ahead and I listed it, I can get 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 1 6, 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 2 4, 2 5, 2 6. Not only am I making my list organized and easy to read, and I'm making sure that I'm not forgetting any, but it also comes a lot quicker. So it actually makes your life easier. So keep that in mind when you're coming up with your list of sample space when you're doing your homework. Yes, there is homework. You're going to get a worksheet from the sub. You can go ahead and raise your hand and get that worksheet from the sub, and you can go ahead and get started. If you need to do work on a separate sheet of paper, obviously I will always tell you that is A-OK, so go for it. And I am here today, so you will see me later today. If you have any questions, you can ask me as well. But please feel free to ask the sub. They do know what they are talking about. All right.